Hello, everyone, and welcome to Growing Together, a gardening podcast with me, John Lamb, and Don Kinsler, a lifelong gardener and the North Dakota State University Extension horticulturist for Cass County. Don, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Now, it may sound kind of funny because I don't really want January and February to go too quickly.
Why?
I mean,
Why?
Why would I say that? Well, of course, I don't like the cold. That can go quickly away. But I like this time to kind of do some thinking and preparing.
True.
And if time goes too quickly and all of a sudden I'm out in the garden, I feel like I wouldn't have prepared as much as I would have liked, because I like to plan and do some figuring, new things that I want to put in and install, and I need a little more preparation time. And so there are some things that I can do during the winter that when spring hits, then we're busy outside.
Yeah.
And so it may sound funny, but I don't want the remaining winter time to go too quick. But cold, yes, I want the cold to go away.
Yeah, I would be fine with the cold going away, and we could do with a little bit more snow, but that would be fine. We'll see what comes here.
We're kind of picky, the right amount of snow is
just the right amount, right? We don't want too much.
Yeah, a total of another 6 inches would be fine for the rest of the winter.
Just parsed out over a while. But
Exactly.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. In January, you stay active by you're looking at your seed catalogs, but you're looking at
the begonias are sprouting. I'm
are
seeing
they?
The little tiny seeds coming up. Yep.
Okay.
And
because you've started those in your basement.
Exactly, because they take a long, long time. And then in maybe late February, then I'll be starting some petunia seeds, first part of March. And so as the months go here, when the time is right, I'll be starting certain things, because certain things need a longer time.
Yep.
Tomatoes grow quickly, so that I don't start until April 1st. But yeah, so the winter can be very active.
Yeah, a good time to kind of stay busy. And one of the things that, like the idea of planning for your garden, you've written a little bit about this, about like some new plants that are coming out, some new plants, some new flowers, some new fruits and vegetables.
Yes, it's kind of a nice predicament to have. But okay, here's the predicament. Okay, what do you do in your containers, your flower boxes, even your vegetable garden? Okay, you've got things that you plant every year because they do well for you.
Right.
You like them.
Yep.
There's certain flowers.
You can count on them.
Yeah, you can count on them.
Petunias.
They're dependable. Okay, and we all have a certain amount of space. Most of us don't have unlimited space. So each year when new varieties come out, do you try the new varieties? Do you plant the new varieties? Which means you probably have to leave some of your old dependable ones behind. But what if that new variety doesn't perform as well? Then you've kind of lost the whole growing season. So that's my predicament oftentimes, is do I stick with the old things that do well, the vegetables, the flowers that I know are going to perform well? Or do I risk it a bit and try some of these new things? And we're going to talk all about some of the new things for 2025. So that's my predicament every year. And, maybe that'll always be a predicament for me. But boy, there's some nice new flowers on the horizon here that are available for us for 2025.
And all of these, we should say that we're going to talk about, are for our zone here, our growing zone.
Yes. Yep.
There are a lot more developments and plants that work better in other zones.
Exactly. So it's going to be fun today here to discuss these new varieties. And of course, if we talked about every new variety that every seed company every plant developer had developed for 2025. I mean, we could do about probably 24 hours continual of a podcast.
It does seem like on some kinds of plants, some kinds of flowers, there's always an update. There's always something is added, and whether it's different color or whether it's
some disease resistant things. Tomatoes and different things.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes varieties can be improved. And, the term new and improved, that wore itself out long ago. But sometimes things are new and actually improvements. So that's my predicament, John, is, do I stick my neck out and try some of these new things? But the first batch of new things that we're going to talk about, I have quite a bit of confidence in. They're the All-America Selections Award winners. And because now that All-America Selections organization. It's a nonprofit. They've been around since 1932. And the way that this works is seed companies that develop new things, they submit their new things to the All-America Selection Group, and they send them out a few years in advance to test gardens. So they're actually tested, and then they have a panel of judges from around the country, and they rate these things. And for a new variety of flower or vegetable to get that All-America Selection Award, it's got to be different, different color, different flavor, a different flower form, or it has to be an improvement. So it's got to be actually improved or new. It can't just be a kind of a repetition of something that's already on the market. So if we see something with that All-America Selection logo, it's a red, white, and blue logo, abbreviated AAS. And so in the garden centers, you'll oftentimes see that logo on plant tags. Or in the seed catalogs, you'll see that logo on the varieties. And so each year I have confidence in these. And our flower beds at our own home are actually display gardens. They send me the seeds of these varieties. Since I don't have enough space to do the vegetables, I do their flower selections.
Okay.
So each year then in our flower beds, I display the All-America winners. The NDSU campus gardens and the Peace Garden are also display gardens.
When you were talking about how you can see that on the tag, that it'll be the All-American selections, it'll be kind of what do you say the tag looks like?
Red, white, and blue.
Red, white, and blue,
logo,
sure.
Kind of a shield.
Is there also something that denotes the year? Or is it always, will something that was the All-American selection from 2 years ago, will that still have that tag, that colorful American flag kind of color scheme?
Yes. Once it's denoted an All-America selection, then it remains that.
Okay.
And usually it will continue. For example, now I don't know the year, it's probably 1950. Have you heard of straight 8 cucumber, which was always a traditional? There are actually improvements, but many people still plant straight 8 cucumber. That was an All-America Selection winner. First Lady Marigold. That was my favorite kind of taller, big-flowered marigold until a few years ago when Big Duck Yellow took over, and that's even better. So now I plant that one. But now, so when I go to buy Big Duck Yellow seed, it has that logo on it. So once an All-America selection, then it's always an All-America
kind of
selection.
tried and true.
But yeah, they don't always indicate what the past ones, what the year was on that. But if you go to their website, it does indicate that.
Okay.
So shall we get into some of these
where do you want to start?
All-America selection flower winners for 2025?
Yeah.
Well, the first is an interesting seed-grown dahlia. Now, these are the type of dahlia that would work well in a container, where you want kind of a feature plant. And it's called Black Forest Ruby with very dark burgundy type of flowers. It grows to about 24 inches tall. So if in a container, if you want something with a little bit of height and then something spiller or trailing around the outside, that dahlia, Black Forest Ruby, that's going to be nice. And also dianthus, Capitan magnifica. They cross 2 species of dianthus. Carnations are in that dianthus family. It's a big family. But anyway, it's a very pretty dianthus with deep pink blooms, lighter edges, and it can be grown in containers.
Are all of these annuals that we're talking about here at first?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. This group of flowers, All-America Selection flowers, these are all annual type flowers. And the next is a marigold mango tango.
Yeah.
I like the catchy names of these. And of course, marketing is
We've talked
everything.
about that is just it's a big part of the fun, isn't it? Of plant shopping and
marigold mango tango.
The naming is great.
The naming, and of course they must have people that do this.
Oh yeah,
I'm not creative enough to think up these names, but they must have people specially hired.
Yes,
for these names. And now that mango tango marigold is a red and yellow bicolor, 2-tone flower at 10-inch plants tall. It's going to be nice for flower beds or containers as well. And the next is a nasturtium, baby gold. Now, this baby series of nasturtium, it's known for kind of a small flowered, a small statured plant. So they're quite tailored for containers, especially because container gardening is hot.
Yeah.
Many people don't have enough space for a big in-ground flower bed, so flowering containers are great.
Nasturtiums they're edible, aren't they?
Yeah, you got it. You read my mind, John.
Yeah. Do you ever have them? Okay.
I have tasted nasturtium, the flowers. As I recall, I thought they were kind of a pleasant, peppery type. But now I'll be growing these, and so I'm going to taste them. I've seen them pictured like in salads. The blossom, and I think the leaves are edible too. I'm sure they are, because if flowers are edible, the leaves are going to be edible too. And so I've seen these in salads, edible type. Have you ever tasted them?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
So, well, anyway, now I'm sure these should grow. So when they're blooming, I'll bring some in.
Okay.
Happy, and we'll have a taste test.
That would be kind of a fun thing, taste test on the air.
Yes, it would. Yes, exactly. Sometimes when I do radio, I get a kick of when I bring things in. And of course, I always say it's show and tell on the radio, which you have to paint the picture. So anyway, stay tuned on that. We'll taste it. In that same nasturtium group, the baby series, there's a baby red, which is a new winner, and a baby yellow. And so again, kind of a more tailored plant. The original nasturtium, if you just plant nasturtium, they get kind of viney and sprawly. But the baby series, they've neatened it up. So it's a neater plant. So the baby series. And of course, petunia, Deco Max Pink. I don't know if that name, is that name going to sell Deco Max?
Well,
that doesn't hit me.
Max Pink would sound like one
Deco
thing, but
Max
Deco,
Pink.
I don't
But
understand.
anyway, it sounds very beautiful. Delicate yet vibrant pink flowers covering the plant. Now, this is going to be a great one for containers, hanging baskets, or flower beds. And now the interesting thing that really caught my eye when I read this is that the judges rated it as high or higher than Supertunia Vista bubblegum.
And that is
have you grown that?
Yeah, and it's a super grower.
That's like one of the premium for hanging baskets or containers.
And you probably only need one.
Oh, definitely.
If you were to buy that as a plant in a store, if you were to go to a garden center, you get one that will fill up and overfill and spill out of if you have a hanging basket. We've used it, and I've had to get used to. I don't need two.
Yeah, so that's become a kind of a household name among gardeners is Vista bubblegum, the Supertunia. And so for the judges to rate this as high or higher than that says a lot.
Now, so Supertunia Vista bubblegum, is that a
Deco Max?
Do you know if that's a proven winners? We're going to talk about some proven winner plants later. Is that a proven winners, or is that just kind of a generic? Okay.
Yeah, no, I think it is.
Okay.
Yeah. And so Petunia Deco Max Pink.
Yeah.
Kind of a clumsy name a little bit, but yeah, we're going to have to keep our eye on that.
I wonder, this says judges rated it high or higher. And I wonder if that's just for its profusion, for its color, because the great thing too about especially these Supertunias, you don't have to deadhead them. The petunias, they if you fall off, you can
bingo. You don't have to do a lot of trimming,
not a lot of cleaning, which is a really nice benefit.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wonder if there's kind of like what the advantages to that one are. That's a great one to keep an eye on.
It is, and the next is a petunia called Shake Raspberry. Now, the flowers have a coloration of a blended raspberry kind of milkshake swirled with some lemon lime in it. So this is going to be an interesting flower color with that combination of kind of the raspberry pink and the lime green in it. And it's said to have a compact mounded habit. So this one should be good for containers or flower beds also. The next one is a snapdragon called Double Shot Yellow Red Heart. Kind of a long name, Snapdragon Double Shot Yellow Red Heart. Now, these are a unique yellow flowered with red center. And that double shot is a series, and Some of the past ones have been All-American winners, and I've grown those, and they're very nice. Now, one interesting thing with snapdragons, whether it's in a container or an in-ground flower bed, you do need to cut off that spent flower stalk in order to get them to continue to grow. So it's not that big of a deal or chore. Now, the next one is a zinnia. Oh, and zinnias are so nice. They take the heat, the drought. There's tall types, there's short types. And so a lot to be said about zinnias. They love almost whatever weather will be thrown at it. So zinnia Zydeco Fire. It's a fiery orange blooms born in plants that are about 20 inches high. So if you do put it in a container, you want to kind of be in the higher point of the container. I'm guessing this one might be a little more adapted to an in-ground flower bed. But the judges said that it was a fairly low-spreading, vigorous habit, good disease resistance. And of course, the color is said to be just a fiery orange. So that'll be a pretty one.
Boy, that name Zydeco Fire certainly does that. That kind of tells you just like how bright and vibrant and because it's when I think of Zydeco, I think of New Orleans and the music there and just the color.
I'm not familiar with that term, Zydeco.
Yeah, Zydeco
where is that from?
I'm not sure if it's just the type of music in New Orleans, but a lot of the washboard, accordion, kind of really upbeat, super fun music. It's kind of, I think, a little bit more backcountry. It's not jazz.
Awesome. Count the day lost, you don't learn something new.
Oh, yeah.
Now I know what Zydeco
is. I can't remember the woman's name. She actually played up here in the 80s. But yeah. Yeah,
it's appropriately named Zydeco Fire.
Yeah, very. It's hard to not dance to the music, hard to not have your toe tapping. So that just kind of.
I'll think of that when I'm planting these.
To have that in the garden, and I love the fact that here we're going to end this segment with zinnias. We started off with dahlias. I always think of those two together for some reason. Is it because they're both just great kind of a cut flower bed type of things? Maybe that's, I know we're going to be growing some zinnias in a flower bed for that idea, because zinnias also, from what I understand, is that you cut them and they will grow back. So they're very...
Definitely. And in fact, one of the older varieties of zinnia was cut and come again.
Okay.
So that described it well. So any of these varieties of zinnia make wonderful bouquets. And so, you cut them and they keep coming.
Well, that's great. Well, let's take a quick little break. When we come back, we're going to talk about we're going to move into some fruits and vegetables.
Get 3 months of local news for just 99 cents a month. You'll get unlimited access to the news you need to stay engaged and connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe now to get 3 months of local news for only 99 cents a month.
All right, we're back. We're talking about kind of some fun new plants that would be good for our area. We just went through. We talked about the annuals, but all of these all-American selections, these seed packets that you can go out and buy.
And many of the seed catalogs feature these new items, the All-America selection winners. And so I get excited about all these new things. Just the thought of trying these and seeing what they can do. It's exciting. And I'm excited to try some of the new vegetables from All-America selections that were given this coveted award.
Yeah, like what do we got on the list?
Well, the first one is a pepper called Pick and Pop Yellow. That's kind of a sprightly name. It said they're cute, snack-sized mini peppers, extra sweet, just the right amount of juiciness and crunch is the description, to pop into your mouth, fresh from the garden. It sounds enticing. I like the descriptions that they give on some of these. Pick and Pop Yellow. Now, the next is a squash, Green Lightning. It's described as being a patty pan type squash. Now, these are a summer type squash. Yep. They would harvest and eat when they're tender.
They're smaller.
Yeah. And, I like the summer squash, the zucchini type, and I think this Green Lightning would be good too. I like them steamed with a little butter and salt.
Oh, that does sound good.
That's my favorite way of eating the summer squash. Of course, butter and salt even makes
That makes
zucchini
everything,
taste good. The next is a squash called Thriller, described as being a dumpling-type squash, a decorative green, cream, and orange skin. A semi-bush plant, so it can be grown in a smaller garden with great flavor. And so that'll be an interesting type. It's described as a dumpling type squash. I'm not sure I've grown a squash that's quite like that.
Well, that helps sell it as far as being really sounding quite delectable.
Yes. Makes me hungry for dumplings. The next is a tomato that received the All-America winner, the tomato Tonatico, if I'm pronouncing that right, T-O-N, Tonatico. It's a cherry-type tomato. Now, there's lots of cherry tomatoes on the market, so right away I wonder, I wonder what makes this one any better. It says it ripens in about 60 days from transplanting, so decent earliness on it. And each plant is said to bear 150 to 200 fruits.
Okay.
That should feed a family of 24.
Yeah, so. That'll be pretty good.
And sweet and robust with great resistance to cracking. And now, resistance to cracking, that's a common problem with cherry tomatoes. And because oftentimes cherry tomatoes want to develop that crack. Have you ever grown any of the types?
Not cherry tomatoes with sun sugars, crack. But they don't crack.
Yeah, the sun sugar is fairly resistant to cracking. That's one reason I
haven't
like
grown
that
cherry
one.
Tomatoes now you think about it.
But that was one of the big things that plant breeders worked on was some of the older varieties just would develop a crack. It didn't affect the flavor any, but I mean, when you pick them and put them in a little bowl, it's kind of disappointing when they crack open.
Visually, and for something like that, you do kind of want that.
And the last one for All-America 2025 of vegetables is the kohlrabi Constance with a K. It's a purple kohlrabi, improved smooth skin, vibrant purple color, crunchy bulbs that are crack resistant and long lasting. And of course, when we say crack resistant, sometimes kohlrabi out in the garden, it will crack open.
Yep.
And do you like kohlrabi?
I'm sure I know I've had it. I just cannot, I do not remember what it tastes like.
No, I grew up, we grew it in the garden all the time, and my mom would steam it, again, with butter and salt.
Yep.
And so I suppose that's where I grew up liking these vegetables steamed with butter and salt. And gosh, it was delicious. And then later, after we were married, people were serving kohlrabi just cut up raw.
Yeah.
It's nice and crisp, and it's actually very good. But to me, it was like eating, a string bean raw and not cooked. But actually, a kohlrabi is quite good and crunchy and flavorful.
Is it kind of in the broccoli family?
Boy, you got it. Yeah, it's in that same cauliflower, broccoli, cabbage family.
Okay.
Yep, exactly.
What's the name? Do you remember the name for that right now? I cannot.
The Brassica
Brassica
crucifer group.
Okay.
Yep. So a person watches on kohlrabi for the same insects that affect the cauliflower, broccoli, cabbage.
Okay.
The white butterflies and things like that. But the purple color, that'll be nice.
Really,
nice
it is a very colorful plant. Like I said, I can't remember tasting it. But I do remember it being like a visually.
The green is the customary kind of green on the outside and kind of a cream color on the inside of it when you slice it. So, yeah. So anyway, I'll make sure we'll have some taste testing.
We should do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
That'll be really fun.
We'll taste these, taste some of these.
We've been talking about these all-American selections, but, you brought in a list of another really kind of a trusted name when it comes to seeds is Burpee.
Yes, they're a household name in gardening.
And really accessible. That's probably the one that's the most widely available, easiest to find. They're in grocery stores when the time comes.
Yeah, and they do a lot of developing of new things. In fact, Burpee developed the first hybrid tomato back in the, I think, early 1960s. So they always have something on the burner. And now, brace yourself because there may be a revolution coming in how we plant tomatoes
Ooh.
based on burpees breeding.
What would
Okay,
that be?
here it is. Okay, now when we plant tomatoes out in the garden, we use starter plants, transplants. That's just customary. That's the way it's always been done because that gives you earlier tomatoes, earlier ripening fruit.
You've got that head start.
Yeah, you got a head start. You're planting out a plant that's already been started, for 6 weeks, 7 weeks, and so we transplant out plants, starter plants. Okay, well now Burpees has advertised 2 tomato varieties that they say you simply take a seed and plant it out into the garden. They say 10 days before your average frost, the last frost of May. And around here, that's probably, and I think Burpee indicated for our region about May 20th, the last frost for the Fargo area. So they're, if you do a week before that, so they're saying plant a tomato seed into the ground probably around May 10th to the 13th.
Well, that's like around Mother's Day, right? So that's kind of that's kind of for a lot of people. That's a time when they start thinking about
So what they indicate for these 2 tomato varieties that they developed, one is called Groundswell. The other, and that's a beefsteak type tomato, large fruited. The other is Raindrops. That's a cherry tomato. And they indicate that you just simply take the seed, plant it directly out into the garden, and that it will catch up and produce at the same time that transplants would.
So it's kind of a fast growing on the front end.
And they indicate that that planting the seed directly into the garden soil eliminates the transplant shock. Now, I guess, I'm always up for trying something new. So I'm definitely going to try this. I'm also going to do it the conventional way of setting out transplants. And,
tried and true,
we'll see.
It'll work.
We'll see what happens.
I'll be very curious to see.
And, if you transplant tomato plants and give them a little shelter, ours usually don't have transplant shock. And you can set the plants down deeply because tomatoes will root along the stem. And so I guess, I'm open to this. It would be very nice just to plant a tomato seed out and have it catch up with a transplant. But, things that require a longer season, tomatoes, peppers, even your cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, you don't normally just plant a seed out there. You use pre-started plants because that gives you a big head start. So we'll see if this works because in addition to those 2 tomatoes, Groundswell and Raindrops, they also developed 3 peppers that they say can just put a seed in the ground and you don't need the started plants. Those were called So Sweet. The Ground Father. See, they're trying to work into kind of the direct seeded into the ground into these terms. The Ground Father, pepper, and Lava Land. And so anyway, those are going to be something really to try and see, is that going to revolutionize the way we plant tomatoes, that we just direct seed them? And that we no longer need transplants? Well, I guess it remains to be seen.
Yeah.
So, And now they indicate that is for any region. I can see, down south where the soil's warm, maybe are they going to grow really, really fast? But they indicate for any region, because I look carefully for that. So we're going to give it a try. They also have a tomato, not a direct seeded type, but one that they called Super Tom. And it's a big tomato. And what caught my eye is it said, if you order the seed, they'll give you a free spoon. And I thought, a free spoon? Well, anyway, they picture someone holding this big tomato cut in half and eating it with a spoon.
Oh.
Yeah, just kind of fresh like that. They said the flavor is so good that just eat it with a spoon.
Okay.
Yeah, I picture like holding a grapefruit, half a grapefruit in one hand and eating it with a spoon.
Pretty.
And so they're kind of doing that with this big half of a tomato.
That's kind of a monster, it sounds like.
I wonder if the spoon is any good, if it'll be a nice quality. Well, I think I may order it. Then they've also got a tomato called Sun Peach, which is a super sweet cherry type tomato with a peachy pink color.
Boy, that just, again, the name sells it there. Tomato Sun Peach. Yeah.
Yeah, Sun Peach. Yeah, good name.
Boy, I'd be very curious to try that one.
Yes, that's going to be an interesting one to try. I'm going to order some seed for that.
Also, it resists cracking too?
Yes. Yep. And now a watermelon. They've got one called Mini Me, named Mini Me. And of course, watermelon, I like growing big watermelons.
Right.
But just because it's a nice challenge. But, a big watermelon for two people, that's a lot of watermelon. And so a smaller size watermelon is trending. And so Mini Me is said to be a smaller space watermelon. So you don't need it doesn't vine so much. So you don't need such a huge space. And it's perfect for two people. So you maybe don't have this great big humongous thing that you're sticking in the fridge.
Right.
But, one for two people. Mini Me. And and a hot pepper. There's so many good pepper varieties. They've got one, I love the name on this one, Spice and Dice. Spice and Dice hot pepper. It's described as a jalapeno type with just the right amount of heat. Now, of course, right away, then I think just the right amount of heat. Do you like hot peppers?
I do a little bit. I don't get into. I'm certainly not going to do like the ghost peppers or the scorpions or things like that.
I always need a glass of milk handy.
Yes,
because I grew up in a German household, and I always used to joke that our idea of spice was salt on the mashed potatoes.
Okay.
and onions. We used lots of onions.
Pepper, but
black pepper sparingly.
Mustard in a German family, it's got to be some.
Okay. Mustard. But we really did not use hot peppers.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't a thing. But I've grown to appreciate them. Mm-hmm. But the right amount of heat, for me maybe is a little different than right amount for someone else. But interesting. Yeah, Spice and Dice pepper.
Yeah,
so lots of interesting new. And of course, this is just a little sampling of the many, many new vegetable varieties that are on the market from each of these seed companies.
Well, what else does Burpees have on there? What do they have for annuals?
Oh, annuals, they've got a couple of nice things that caught my eye. One was Queenie Lemon Peach Zinnia. And of course, zinnias are trending.
Yep.
Yeah, because they're so carefree. They love the heat. They don't mind if they dry out some. So Queenie Lemon Peach has a very interesting rosy yellow shade of flower. And that Queenie is a series. There are different colors within that series. And then here's one that caught my eye, Van Glow Sunflower.
Great
Again,
name.
the naming people have been
They've got to be proud of that one.
Yes, Van Glow Sunflower. Sunflowers are also trending as a cut flower. Yeah. So this one will grow 4 to 5 feet tall, so they do get fairly sizable in height, but it's got big oversized blooms of bright yellow, and they have kind of a lime green center, and it's described as being mesmerizing in bouquets. And it thick stalks that don't tumble over in the wind, so it'll stand
Very
upright
important.
and then use it as a cut flower.
Yeah.
So because I'm seeing even in the kind of the do-it-yourself bouquets, at the florist shops,
Mm-hmm.
the take-home bouquets that you kind of put in your own vase. Sunflowers are popular in those.
Much more growing a lot on that.
So that's a good one to try.
All right. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about some new plants and some new seeds on the market.
If you're loving this podcast, be sure to check out our full lineup. From news and local politics to sports and true crime, find your next great listen right now at inforum.com/podcasts. That's inforum.com/podcasts.
All right, we're back. We're talking about kind of what's new, things that we're looking forward to planting this year. We talked about some All-American selections. These are kind of tried and true seeds for our area. We just talked about some burpee seeds. And now we're going to talk about another name that's kind of popular in, you'll see it in garden centers. Proven winners. Do you remember like when you started seeing them here locally?
You know, this has been an interesting trend over maybe the last, dozen years or so, in which we find these plant brands.
Yeah.
Brands of plants. And Proven Winners is a very popular, recognizable brand of plants. And of course, within that Proven Winners brand, they've got the annuals that we'll discuss. We're going to talk about their perennials. They've even got some shrubs. And so now the Proven Winners brand that is sold at many garden centers, it's very recognizable. Usually it's a white pot or light-colored pot with a big PW on it. So very recognizable and they've, I think, done quite a nice job of developing new things that have a good track record. And I kind of like being able to identify these when I go into the locally owned garden centers and see the big PW. I thought, oh, good. They've put a lot of research into developing these materials. And the ones that I've tried have performed really, really well. So the first group of Proven Winners brand, a group of annuals. Now, the first is called Super Bells Double Smitten Pink. Well, I'm not sure if that name is going to sell it, but it's a Calibrachoa. No, there's another name.
Yeah,
but Calibrachoa is a species that it's best described as being like little miniature petunias.
Oh, okay.
Another name for Calibrachoa is Million Bells. That's kind of a generic name, Million Bells. So used a lot in containers, hanging baskets, and they look like kind of little miniature petunias. Well, there have been good improvements in this Calibrachoa Million Bells type of plants. And so the Proven Winners has Super Bells Double Smitten Pink. Well, it's a nice little pink double flowered. And of course, now what a flower is called double, it means it just has more flower petals in it.
Okay, double the amount almost. Yeah.
Exactly. And so instead of being a flat flower, it's got all these additional inner petals, so it makes it a rounded blossom. And so when we hear things called a double flower, that means it's just nicely rounded instead of kind of the flatter trumpet-shaped single. You know, if flowers aren't double, then they're kind of called single flowers. So anyway, that's Super Bells. The next one is a heliotrope, is kind of the name of the flower type, called Aromagica Purple. Now, heliotrope has been around for a long time. A nickname for heliotrope is cherry pie flower. It is one of the most fragrant flowers.
Oh.
We used to grow heliotrope and sell them in our garden center. And heliotrope. A problem with heliotrope is that it didn't flower all that well. It was maybe a little rangy, sprawly. And so Proven Winners has improved upon the shape and the flower production of it, and they call it Aromagica. So they've worked in the aromatic part into the name, Aromagica. So if you want something that really is going to have a wonderful fragrance, noticeable as you're standing there, and this one is tailored to container growing also, and Aromagica Purple, beautiful purple flowers, and so that'll be a fun one to try. So when you see that at the garden centers, that's certainly worth trying. Oh, and we've talked about the Supertunia, Vista bubble gum.
Yeah.
And now Proven Winners has a new Supertunia called Tierra. Am I pronouncing it right? Tierra Blue.
Tierra? Yeah.
Tierra Blue, a deep purple blue, but what makes it special is it has a light purple center. So it's got kind of a two-tone flower color that really pops.
Yeah.
And of course, the Supertunia is great for containers, hanging baskets, mixed planters. But again, this is going to be one of those things where I think you could plant one plant in a container or hanging basket, and it's going to fill out nicely. And the last one of their annuals that I kind of chose that looked like it had some interest is a portulaca. Now, portulaca is kind of in the moss rose family. Purslane, the weed, is in that same portulaca family, but these are ornamentals. So the portulaca Mojave mango. And of course, these are heat and drought resistant. So they kind of have that, kind of a little thickened, fleshy type little leaves. And so portulaca Mojave mango, a beautiful kind of brilliant, kind of orangey shade with some kind of yellow and red thrown in there. So a very interesting one. I like portulaca of the different named varieties for putting in as kind of a spiller on the edge of a heat-loving container.
I don't know
so
if I've
zinnias for something height and these trailing on the outside.
Portulaca, I don't recall ever seeing these before.
Yeah, I have to check those out in the garden centers. Yeah, they're nice.
Nice. What about the perennials?
So Proven Winners has some wonderful perennials too. Now, there's a coral bells. Now, I pronounce it hoikura, Heu, hoikura. I've also heard some pronounce it hukura. So the million bells.
You could just sidestep and then say coral bells.
Coral bells.
Yeah.
Yes. And now this new variety is called Dressed Up Prom Dress. That's an interesting name. So why would they name it Dressed Up Prom Dress? Well, it's got frilly leaves.
Okay.
And of course, coral bells, the hoikura, is also quite ornamental, both in flower and just the foliage itself.
Yep.
So it's got neat frilly leaves with kind of a greenish, tannish color to the leaves.
Yeah.
So interesting on that. Oh, and now on my bucket list are the winter hardy perennial hibiscus.
Yeah.
Now, the most notable named series of this is the Summerific group.
Okay.
And they have been overwintering in our area, in our zone 4, for people. And so the Summerific series of hibiscus, they have great big dinner plate size flowers or bigger.
And the flowers really
I don't have one. Do you have one?
We had one 1 year, and then I think we moved it. We moved it.
I'm alarmed with the had.
We moved it.
They should be put in a microclimate where it gets some snow and protection. They're not for a windswept hillside.
Yeah.
Because, even though they're zone 4, they could use a little protection.
And the flowers only last like a day or two, right? They do not. They're quick.
They do.
But they're gargantuan,
massive.
flowers.
Yep, and hopefully you got enough buds coming so it'll continue to bloom. Well, the new one that they've got is called Cookies and Cream. It's a beautiful white shade, with some kind of cream thrown in. Okay, next on the Proven Winners perennials, they've got a hosta series called Shadowland. And they've got some nice new varieties. One is called Sound of Music, kind of a neat name, with pretty leaves. This one, I got a kick out of the name, Gigantosaurus hosta. It's huge.
Do you think it's going to be bigger than the Wu? Because the Wu hostas those are, as far as I know, those were the biggest.
Yes, and I think Gigantosaurus is said to be even bigger than that. I believe 6 feet in diameter.
Oh,
a plant about approaching 6 feet in diameter. So that's going to get big.
Yeah.
And another one on that group is called Lone Star. Okay, next on the Proven Winners perennials is Living Large Big Sky. That's a perennial salvia. Now, the perennial salvia, we've talked before, an All-America winner from previous years was Blue Bayou. Beautiful. And now Living Large Big Sky, perennial salvia, it's got this very nice deep violet color. It's also said to be a little bigger than some of the others. So where a person might want a sizable perennial, getting up to about 30 inches in height, this would be a good one. And it's a little later to bloom than some of the perennial salvia. So by planting such as Blue Bayou and this one, you'll have a little larger color. They'll be blooming at slightly different times. So it'll extend the blooming period on those.
And with the salvia too, you cut them back and you'll get a second flush, right?
Exactly. And so that's really recommended on this too.
A nice thing. I wonder then if that means that'll go later into the fall.
Could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like that idea. Oh, the next one, I like the name on this one. The perennial allium, the ornamental onion, bobblehead.
Well, allium does kind of lend itself to that because
It does.
you've got this
the round, circle.
slender stalk, and then you've got this big puff up on top.
Yeah, exactly. So bobblehead, that's well named. It's got a pale lilac flower color. The leaves are kind of a bluish green. They're quite ornamental too. And so that'd be a fun one to try. And supersized flowers is the description on it. And so I'm curious. I want to plant that. Boy, I'm going to be busy.
You've got, and your shopping
I'm
list
going to
is
have
really
to budget
filling
also.
up. Yeah.
Yes, my wish list is getting long here. Oh, and I love the name on this next one, a lady fern, which is the hardy fern that you can grow on the north side. It's kind of a shaded area. Fronds forever.
Oh,
that's well named.
That's nice.
But it was selected to maybe be a little nicer variety, an improvement on the lady type fern. I'm curious, sometimes in the heat of summer, even on the shade, some of the ferns can get a little brownish So I'm curious. Fronds forever, lady fern. And clustered bellflower. Now I've got some of these, clustered bellflower. The bellflower is a big group of plants. There are some very weedy bellflowers.
They can be invasive.
Creeping bellflower. Yeah, that name creeping should be a warning to us right away. Many people at one time planted it as a perennial, but it does creep and becomes weed-like. Well, anyway, these clustered bellflowers grow in a neat rounded clump. So I've bought these at local garden centers, and there's a couple of new colors. Bells and Whistles is a pretty new color. Angel Bells is a white one. Bells and Whistles is a kind of dark purplish blue. And so those will be nice to watch. And of course, garden centers, no garden center is going to be able to have all of these. You just can't stock everything. But these will be fun to see at our locally owned garden centers. Oh, and catmint. Now, my favorite one up to this point was the one called Cat's Pajamas. Mm-hmm. Oh, the name was pretty good.
Those are another proven winners, I think.
Exactly, yes. And very beautiful. Now, here's another one that they say is maybe even more floriferous because the flowers are spaced closer together on the stems. Okay, catmint, they're calling it Persian blue. P-U-R-R.
Again,
Persian.
The marketing department for some of these companies, they're loving coming up with these names.
Yeah, exactly. And so if we still stick into the Proven Winders brand of new things, they also have some shrubs. These are going to be interesting to try. There's a dogwood that's hardy enough for zones 3 and 4 called Sergeant Pepper. Now, it's a variegated dogwood, variegated meaning it has two-tone leaves. So this one has green and white two-tone leaves, but it also has some pink thrown in.
Really?
So, so that's going to be kind of a tricolor.
I'd be very curious to see that.
And then also it says it has very nice fall color. So Sergeant Pepper dogwood, that'll be interesting to see.
I wonder does it say what the stems are like?
No.
If you get the kind of the red stems or the blue, or some of these are even yellow
that's a good
stems.
Question. Because sometimes in the winter, most of the dogwoods do have colored stems, twigs. And the next is a burning bush that is seedless. Now, many parts of the country were frowning or refusing to let burning bush be planted because it has been spreading by seed in some areas. Burning bush is a member of the euonymus family, but now Proven Winders has developed a seedless burning bush called Fireball. And burning bush is one of the most dramatic fall-colored shrubs. And so Fireball is seedless. So for parts of the country, and I believe Minnesota had this kind of on the, do not plant list, the burning bush. In North Dakota, I haven't seen it spreading yet, but you see, when producing seeds, obviously in parts of the country, it has gotten out of hand. But the seedless, we'd be good to go with Fireball.
We've got one in our yard. We haven't seen the signs of it creeping out. It's been growing gradually, but nothing, it's not growing
Rabbits
out
love
of,
them.
Yeah,
so
rabbits will keep them in
certainly
check.
never
so
got to a point where it produced seed because the rabbits eventually ate the whole thing down to where it didn't even regrow from the roots.
Yeah, so I didn't know it was even a seed. I didn't know that was an issue with that.
Yeah, and I think in many parts of the country, rabbits are so ravenous it never gets to a size that produces seeds. So anyway, that'll be fun to check. Oh, now this caught my eye right away. A rose that's edible, a flavorette pear-D with a D, like the fruiting pear
yeah,
with a D. Flavorette. Now, they've developed this series of edible roses called the Flavorette series. There are different colors. And so the latest is this one called Pear, P-E-A-R, like the fruiting pear, paired. And now this caught my eye. Light pink flowers, beautiful, but it said the flowers add a pear flavor to both sweet and savory dishes alike.
Wow.
So, I knew that rose petals are edible.
Yeah.
I can't say that I've ever really tasted any. Rose hips are edible, of course. But apparently this series, the Flavorette series, and this new one called Pear, are highly edible and flavorful. So now I'll have to order or find those. Hopefully garden centers will be having it. And so I'm curious to try that.
Yeah. That sounds like a fun one.
Edible rose, yeah.
And my first thought with that is if it's an edible rose, I wonder if the plant has also developed its own, it has more thorns as a way to defend itself.
Oh.
But I don't know.
Yeah. That'd be interesting to try.
Yeah, I'd be curious.
And so then the last one I would mention on the shrubs is the Bloomerang series of lilacs. Has a couple of new colors.
Bloomerang. Great. Such a fun name.
Because the reason they called it Bloomerang is because it's a repeat bloomer. It comes back again, like boomerang, I guess. People have been clever in these days. Okay, Bloomerang lilac. It blooms in the spring, but also they bloom again later in the summer. Now, I've got a Bloomerang purple. I found that it's not dependable totally of that second bloom. It depends kind of on the weather conditions. We've had some hot summers, and I don't think that has favored the rebloom, but they do and can. Our Bloomerang purple has rebloomed, not every year, but that's okay. So they've got a couple of new colors. Bloomerang Ballet is kind of a lighter pinkish lavender tone, and also Snow Mound is a white flowered Bloomerang. So in that series, and the Bloomerang series is a kind of a neater height. They'll still get 6 feet, but I mean, the standard old-fashioned lilac can get 15 feet tall. They're big. But these will easily, in time, get at least 6 feet high. So they're not a miniature, but they're certainly not as big as the old-fashioned lilac.
Do you know if the fragrance is any different?
Fragrance is good.
Okay.
Yeah. When I say good, I didn't say it, knocks your socks off.
Okay.
I still think the old-fashioned lilac has probably the best fragrance.
Yeah.
But these Bloomerangs do have fragrance, so it's nice, but it's not, I don't find it quite as strong. But I mean, that's okay. I'm happy they have fragrance.
Yeah. We talked here about proven winners. We talked about the All-American selections before. There's a couple of first edition plants, and that's another one that I've seen.
Yeah, another brand of plants.
Starting to see those
and so in the garden centers, you will see first edition plants. Typically, many shrubs will be that. And the first edition brand has come up with a couple of things that really caught my eye. And the first is a hydrangea that is of the Annabelle type. Now, when I say Annabelle type, another name for that is the arborescens type. They're the fully winter hardy, well adapted for our area hydrangea that has the big round flowers.
Yep.
The Annabelle series has, for many, many decades, has been the one, the variety, the cultivar. The big rounded white blossoms do beautifully in the shade. One disadvantage of Annabelle was they tended to flop. The stems would be so weak that the big flowers would just and the stems would just kink over and all be laying kind of closer to the ground. But the plant breeders at First Editions have remedied that. They've got that same Annabelle type, and it is called flowerful. Flowerful. And the key points on that is it has strong stems that they say do not flop and break. They also say that it produces more flowers. It is supposed to be just covered with white flowers of that Annabelle type on strong, more sturdy stems.
Yeah,
so
that sounds great.
Yeah,
that does really sound like a very that's a significant advancement for
very much.
Yeah, for
very much. Because I've gardeners over the years have asked, how do we keep those Annabelle type hydrangeas from flopping and breaking? Do we put like peony cages around? But I found that when you put a peony cage around, well, they still tend to want to flop, and then they'll kink and break right at the point where that fencing was.
Yeah.
And they'll break over at that point. So yes, major advancement. So keep your eye out for flowerful hydrangea. And another one, and kind of the last item that we'll mention from First Editions also, is green wall spire crabapple.
This one I'm very curious.
Yes.
about.
Now, this is an ornamental crabapple, with the beautiful pink flowers in May. And this one, green wall spire, is for where space is at a premium, where you don't have enough space, maybe for a big, wide-spreading flowering crabapple. This one grows straight up. It's columnar. And so they suggest that if you want privacy, if you want a living wall in a kind of a small space yard, plant these fairly close together and you'll have an upright living wall. It'll bloom pretty in May. And so green wall spire.
Boy, I understand all those things together, but have you ever seen a columnar?
There are a
crabapple?
few of those. Yes, there's I can't remember the name right now, but there was one developed out of Canada that is columnar. And now this one is described as being 5 feet wide, up to 5 feet wide. Now that still sounds like it gets, but actually when you think 5 feet out, the typical ornamental crabapple will get a width of probably 20, 25 feet, if you actually go from the trunk on out, easily probably a spread of 25 feet. So one that is only going to get 5 feet, a total 5 feet wide, that's pretty narrow as a crabapple goes, and then straight up.
Do you know roughly how tall?
Let's see. It's a standard height, and I think it was listed at probably about 15 to 20 feet.
Okay.
And the standard crabapple will get 20, 25 feet. So this may be a hair less, I think, was located, but it'll still get a wall 20 feet tall.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, so it is. That'll be interesting if a person wants to do some screening and you don't want it to take up a massive amount of space in your yard. This would be an interesting one.
Yeah.
So, this really excites me, all these things. Like I've said many times before, we are in good times gardening.
Yep.
When Mary and I had our garden center, and it's been, probably 20 years, since we've not had it, we thought we really had something when the wave petunia was invented. And, but in the meantime, there have been so many more things developed in annual flowers, trees, shrubs, perennials. And so we are in some of the best gardening times that I've ever experienced. We did not have these varieties before. And so, like I say, we are just, in fact, it does cause the predicament because most of us don't have unending money supply or space. And so you really do have to pick and choose. And it's a hard thing to pick and choose because these are all so good.
Yeah, then you gave us a really great list of things to go out and look for, whether you're looking at buying seeds and getting things started or going out to the garden centers and getting some plants.
Boy, it's going to be fun to visit the garden centers. And of course, typically a lot of these things are probably going to be available at the garden centers, I suppose, beginning in April or so, when a lot of them get in their stock and start getting their shrubs and perennials all in and ready for us to come in and buy. So it's going to be fun to browse the garden centers this year.
I want to say, and this is for the listeners out there, today's Don's birthday. And I'm hoping that Don can go out and go to a garden center today or look through his seed catalog and just enjoy the day. So
I'm going to. Thank you, John.
If people want to send you a birthday wish, or if they have questions about plants, or they want to talk about what they're excited to plant, what's the best way to reach you?
Send me an email, donald.kinsler, KINZLER, @ndsu.edu. Yes, I think we're going to go out for a birthday lunch. And after that, maybe we will go to Garden Center because those are my favorite gifts.
Why not? That sounds like a great way to spend a January day.
Very much so. And some of the, what's interesting too, okay, even though the trees and shrubs and perennials are a little ways in the distance, house plants.
Yes.
We need some new house plants.
Yeah. I think we've got plans. We've got a houseplant show coming up. So, yes, go out there. You could call this research.
Super. I like that. Thanks again, John.
All right. Thanks, Don. You have a good birthday and have a good week.
Thank you, and thanks everyone for listening.